15.1, producing more food. More people on Earth requires more food to sustain that population. So we are limited in how much suitable land we have for agriculture to grow that extra food, though. So as a human population, we've needed to use technology to grow more food in the space that we have. So we've developed pesticides and synthetic fertilizer to help maximize the amount of food resources we can get from that land. There's pros and cons associated with both of these. Pesticides are chemicals that control organisms that humans consider pests. There's two different types. An insecticide will kill insects, and a herbicide kills weeds. Pesticides describe both of those. A pro of using pesticides is it kills pests that eat or compete with crops. So pests that eat them would be insects, maybe like grasshoppers, or compete with them could be weeds. A con is that pesticides can have very long-lasting negative effects on the environment. Pesticides like DDT were really commonly used to control bug populations. Pests destroy about 30% of Earth's crops each year. So pesticides are important for sustaining our food resources. DDT was used to control insects that ate crops. However, after they'd been using DDT for a while, scientists noticed that bigger animals, such as falcons and hawks, were dying off. They connected this with the use of DDT. As DDT was consumed by smaller organisms in a food chain, its concentration gets increased as that organism is eaten. So for instance, DDT is sprayed, which kills grasshoppers. Now, if a mouse eats a grasshopper before it dies, because a DDT is not an immediate effect, the mouse has ingested the DDT that was meant solely for the grasshopper. Now, that concentration may not be enough to kill the mouse. So the mouse eats a few more grasshoppers because one wasn't enough, and the mouse gets more DDT than was in just one grasshopper. Now, the mouse is still living, and the hawk catches the mouse. Now, the hawk has DDT, and the hawk doesn't eat just one mouse. The hawk eats multiple mice, and its concentration increases. So although we may have started with a small amount of concentration of DDT in a grasshopper, it increases up the food chain. This is called biological magnification. So the risks of pesticides are, of course, biological magnification, or biomagnification, sometimes it's called. Also some health problems in humans. So some early insecticides also caused cancer. And resistance. Some bugs aren't affected by the pesticide, and they're said to be naturally resistant. So for instance, in DDT, maybe some grasshoppers didn't die from the DDT. Now, if they survive and reproduce, they pass on this resistance to DDT to their offspring. The more this happens, the more useless the pesticide is, because more and more of these pests are resistant to the pesticide itself. Therefore, as humans, we needed to invent stronger ones to kill these bugs, which may have more harmful effects. So we have to outweigh these pros and cons. Synthetic fertilizers contain plant nutrients like nitrates, and they help increase the yield or amount of crop produced. So with a fertilizer, we can grow more food on less land. In fertilizers, we have nitrogen, so nitrates, phosphorus, phosphates, and potassium. Those are what the three numbers on your fertilizer mean. However, our fertilizers could be too much of a good thing. Eutrophication is the buildup of nutrients in an aquatic system. So fertilizer is spread across land, and it can enter a water system when it is washed from the land, like the crops and golf courses and lawns it might be applied to, with runoff from rain and snow. So when things melt or after a rain shower, we notice that waterways increase in the amount of fertilizers dissolved in them. This isn't a good thing. So too much fertilizer in a waterway can cause what's called an algal bloom. So too much fertilizer in a lake or a stream allows algae and plants at the surface of the water to grow fast because that's what fertilizer does. However, deep water plants get no sun and die because there are so many plants on the surface. Therefore, they stop producing oxygen. The decomposers in the waterways now have lots of food because of those deep water plants that have died, and their population increases rapidly. They use oxygen in the lake through cellular respiration. So now, because there's no more oxygen really being produced at the bottom of the lake, and it's being used up by these decomposers, there's a lack of oxygen in the lake. This kills fish and other aquatic animals, leading to more decomposition, less oxygen, and again, this is how we get an algal bloom. Some practice on page 296, number 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be helpful for this topic.